Welcome in, y'all. Happy Thanksgiving. Got my week 13 locks here. Doing pretty good against the spread on the year. Doing really good, actually, in the top 0.2% there. Let's get it started with our first one. It's the early Thanksgiving game. I've actually done really well on Thursdays this year, so we'll hope that can continue here. It's Packers at Lions. Lions are favored by 3 points in this one. And the big thing I want to talk about is their matchup earlier this season. Now, I know, and I've said this a lot, when two teams play earlier in the year and then they play again later, those, it's not always representative of what's going to happen, right? That we've already seen that several times this year. Teams are splitting games. But this is one of those, it's the way the Packers did it, and I think that formula is still the same of how they're going to attempt to do it this time. They got the lead, and they stopped the Lions' running game. First off, the Lions couldn't run the ball. They were averaging like 2 yards a carry. But also having the lead kind of took the Lions out of that mode. Jared Goff had to throw the ball 39 times. It just wasn't the recipe for success for the Lions. They were getting to Goff too. Packers play good with the lead. They play good. They're running the ball. They're making you earn everything. And I think they're going to be able to do it again in this one. At the worst case here, 3 points, I'll take that. So my lock here is Packers +3, because you know what? I'm not saying for sure they're going to win this game, which I have all my picks on another video, by the way. I went 10-4 last week against the spread, so go check out that video. But I picked the Packers to win the game in that. But I think worst case, even if they lose, I think we're talking a field goal game here. You could have one of those weird games where it's a 4-point game. Say Packers are up 24-21. Lions score a touchdown, 28-24, they lose by 4. I think that's really the scenario you're looking at where they don't cover here. But, man, I'm thinking even if they lose, it's within that field goal. So I really like the Packers in this one. I really liked how they looked against the Lions in that first one. Like, it wasn't a game where you had fumbles and missed extra, field goals and crazy stuff happening. It was just slow, methodical domination by the Packers in that game. Lions obviously have the ability to learn from that, change up what they're doing. They're at home in this one, but I like the Packers in this game. Then we move on to the late game on Thanksgiving. It is Ravens hosting the Bengals. That's 8:20 on NBC. Joe Burrow is back for this one as far as I'm concerned. I believe he will play tomorrow. And I think that makes this game really exciting. The Ravens are favored by 7, but I said it in my picks video, I think the Ravens are getting a little too much credit for this winning streak. It's not like they're beating elite opponents, and they're not necessarily dominating these poor teams. The Jets were hanging around last week. The Browns were absolutely hanging around against the Ravens. They gave them a real scare there. So the Bengals, I think, are capable of winning this game. So my lock is Bengals +7. The concern here is, you can look at their games last year and honestly the last couple years, it tends to be a high-scoring match between these two. Sometimes when you get high-scoring games, the game is close, even if the final score doesn't necessarily look it. So, they could lose by 10 in a close game, not cover. I understand that, but I feel pretty safe with the Bengals covering. I think Burrow's coming back, going to provide a spark for this Bengals team. Bengals lost both games last year, but one was in overtime and one was on a failed 2-point conversion and with time expired. So they really could have and maybe should have won both of those games. And like I said, I like them here. Joe Burrow might be rusty. Who knows? We'll have to see there. We'll know, when the game starts. There's no way to know before. But I like the Bengals in this one. Then we move on to our next one, and this is the Black Friday game. So 3 games before Sunday even comes around on these locks. And it's the Bears visiting the Eagles. Eagles are favored by a full 7 points in this one. Both teams are 8-3, though. That is a bit of a red flag. The book's telling you that they do think Philadelphia is, pretty far ahead of Chicago. The same record, but favored by a full touchdown. But Philadelphia, both teams concern me. But Philadelphia, for how good they're supposed to be and how good they're doing, they concern me. They've won a lot of games against good teams this year, but a lot of close games that really could have gone either way. I was looking back at it. They've only won, I think, one game this year by more than 7 points. Maybe it was two. It was either one or two of their 8 wins. So most of their games have tended to be close, and they just found a way in the end. And the Bears, they don't have a great win. Their best win right now is like against the Steelers, who are playing a backup quarterback. They've had a pretty easy schedule. They got absolutely dominated by the Lions. They got borderline blown out by the Ravens. So, I mean, this Bears team has its struggles too, but I think the Bears are rising and the Eagles are starting to falter a little bit. And I know the Eagles have had locker room problems in the past, and maybe those are starting to surface again. So I think Chicago +7 is a lock in this one. I like them to go into Philly. It's a tough place to play, but I think they're going to be able to hang around in this one, keep it close. I do think the Eagles ultimately pull it out, but you never know. This should be a fun one. I think it could be a pretty fun game on Black Friday. I'm looking forward to this one for sure, so definitely keep an eye on that one, and that's my pick for that game. Then I have one more for you. Then I also have some leans I'm going to talk about at the end, which I've actually done well on those in the past. San Francisco at Cleveland is my last lock here. San Francisco is favored by 5 points. They're coming off a game where they threw 3 interceptions, or Purdy threw 3 interceptions very early in this game, and they still won by 11 points. However, this 49ers team, while very well coached and they have some star players out there, they're still banged up. The defense, they're still missing some very key players for the rest of the year. Purdy didn't look amazing. Obviously, he threw 3 picks. They've had holes, and the Browns, this defense is for real. Obviously, we've known that. We're this far into the season. They've given a lot of good teams troubles, and they've beaten a couple good teams because of it. And the weather for this one is something I want to make note of too. We have 20-mile-an-hour sustained winds in this one, so gusts, are going to be much higher than that even. There's about a 30% chance of precipitation, and I say precipitation because I don't know if it's going to be snow or rain. It's going to be, I think, 37 degrees. So if it is snow, it won't stick because it can still snow when it's above freezing. Just won't necessarily stick to the ground. So we'll see in that one. But I mean, the weather paired with the Browns defense, and I just think it's a good recipe for the Browns in this one. So Browns +5 is my lock in that one. It should be a fun game, though. It should be interesting. I think it's going to be closer than many people realize. And like I said, I think that weather is going to be a factor. Obviously, there's still half a week to go before, that game kicks off. So the weather can obviously change forecasts between now and then, which could change the pick. But I do kind of like the Browns in this one. Then we're going to move on over to my heavy leans. These are games that I feel pretty good about, but not good enough to, include them in these best picks. And that is Seattle -10.5 at home against Minnesota, and the Giants +7.5 at New England. And I'll break each of them down for you here. So Seattle at home against Minnesota, I mean, the only reason I'm not locking it is just I went 10-4 last week, and I think a couple of the ones I lost were just these big lines, and I'm just being cautious with them, right? But this is a prime blowout spot, if you ask me. You have a Minnesota team, morale is all the way down. Their season has been way worse than they expected. McCarthy might not even play, not that he was playing any good, but I mean, they'd be down to their third-string quarterback at that point. If he is out, if he plays, he's not very scary, especially against the Seattle defense. I think they might eat him alive. And I think the defense is going to set up the Seattle offense to put up a ton of points. I think they could run away with this one. I mean, I really like Seattle at home there. And then the New York one against the Patriots, it's one at first glance. You have 10-2 versus 2-10 on a primetime game. Giants are on the road, and that seems like an easy Patriots win and cover. But, these two teams analytically are closer than you might think they are. The Giants, there's about 5 games this year they probably should have won, but didn't. And, that's not a great thing about a team, but they're playing good teams close a lot of times. They have some good wins against good teams. They've beaten the Chargers and the Eagles. Those are their 2 wins. Funny enough, crazy that those are their 2 wins. So I really like the Giants in this one. I think they're capable of going in there and making it a game. I think I still trust New England to ultimately come out with the win. I think New England knows they can't afford to lose this one. Like I said, home, primetime, they do have that stuff going for them. But I think with Jackson Dart, which, again, this is if Jackson Dart plays. I'm expecting him to. I think they have every ability to keep this thing close. If Jackson Dart's not playing and it's Winston, I don't know how I feel about that one. I'd have to rethink it. But, I mean, Winston did pretty well against Detroit, so maybe I still lean Giants. So those are my picks, my best picks for the week. If you want all my picks, I already have that video up on the channel. But hope you all have a great Thanksgiving and enjoy what should be another great week of football.